All right. It's been raining all night. I give up trying to find the time when I will be recording without background noise. So I apologize, but it's getting really ridiculously late, and I do want to record something. I did promise yesterday that I was going to do parser stuff today, uh, and I spent a lot of time with the parser today. I've made some fun progress, but I'm not ready to do any of the things I said I was going to do. I did put it out on GitHub. I'll send you the link. But yeah, so instead of that, when we talked last, you asked me how long should I prepare for a software, specifically a Facebook interview. How long should I prepare for a software developer interview at Facebook? And um, and the answer to that, I didn't give a good answer. I gave you a long answer. I didn't give you a good answer. I'm probably going to give you another long answer and hopefully a better answer tonight. The the answer obviously is it's less. I can't estimate how long something will take for you, right? I have no input, nothing to base that estimate on. If I said, oh well, it would take this long. If Facebook came to me and said, hey, do you want to interview for a position right now? Would I need time to prepare, and how would I prepare, and how long would I personally prepare if they gave me an interview? I've honestly never in my life prepared for an interview. Um, I haven't had the kinds of jobs that you've had, so maybe I should have. But uh, I have a different perspective when it comes to interview preparation. And so that's really what I want to talk to you about, is less around how long should I prepare and more about how should I prepare. So preparing for an interview, in my opinion, comes down to two things. Now, this would be different if this was your first or second job in the industry, right? Because when you don't have experience, the only thing that an interviewer can actually test you on is what you know. And after you get out of college or after you get out of some boot camp or something like that, the only thing you know is what you know. The only thing you have to talk about is here's what I learned. And those interviews, I don't think they're super valuable even when you're starting out, to be frank. But if you run into an interview where people are still interviewing that way for senior positions, look, the reality is they're not going to be asking you. I mean, they might, but largely they're not going to be asking you about some algorithm or something unless it's absolutely critical to them. But they're not going to ask you about Dijkstra's A-star unless that they do map routing and they just really want to find a person who's done map routing, right? And so, and this is kind of the point, is when you start talking about more senior roles, if somebody's asking about your tools or your technologies or your libraries or your languages, or if somebody's asking you, hey, do you come pre-packaged for this position? The answer is just going to be no, right? At some point, you've specialized enough in your career, and our industry moves fast enough, and unless that company specifically hires from the company you're leaving, and so they hire people who've worked at this company and they know the technologies that are coming from this company, and they've tailored their situation to mirror that situation, it's just extremely unlikely that you're going to be prepackaged for it. And so when people are interviewing that way, it's because they already know who they're going to hire. So just don't worry about those interviews. Do the best you can. I mean, obviously, you might be better than the person that they're trying to hire on the set of skills and technologies they're actually interviewing for. But largely, that kind of interviewing process and those kinds of things are so wildly immature. If you don't get those jobs, good on you. Like, wipe the dust off your feet and move on. But the other two styles of interviewing, I think it's very important to be able to tailor your interviewing persona for them. In other words, interviews are not like your job. Interviews are this other thing. They're it's just this weird kind of role-playing, um, dance/performance that is just trying to give them some peace of mind. And so I think there are two strong ways of giving people peace of mind. So the first one, we talked about. The other one is some people are very into behavior style interviews. So they're going to ask you, hey, given your experience, tell me about a time when you X'd. Not X might be like not like tweeted, but like give me a time when you when there was a conflict with a client, how did you resolve it? Tell me about the time when you found a production bug and tried to fix it. Tell me about the time when, these kinds of things. Tell me about some situation that you had in the past. Now, the problem is we don't normally think of our stories that way. We think of our stories with emotional triggers, not behavior triggers. So my first thing in how you would prepare is get good at telling your stories, but specifically, I'm scrolling off the screen here, map those stories to behaviors. Now, one of the things I want to say just about getting good at telling your stories, you want everything to be positive. I know that's, again, stories tend to be emotional triggers, right? So somebody wronged you, or your boss was a lunatic, or whatever the emotional connection is to the story, that's not important at an interview. You want to trigger it based on behaviors. Here's what I did. Here was the situation that happened. Here's why it answers your question. Here's the outcome, and really just trying to tailor all of that. The other piece to this that I would say you really want to do is use the STAR method. I don't actually like the STAR method, but we don't have time today to talk about what I would do instead. Even if they haven't said, hey, we interview using the STAR method, use the STAR method to describe your stories. It's just going to make it easier for them to take notes. It's going to make it easier for you to capture your thoughts and make sure that you get all of the pieces, the setup, what you did, what the outcome was, that kind of stuff. Okay? Make sure you have structure to your stories and that those stories answer their questions. That's why you want to make sure you're not just good at telling your stories, but that you have the hook into your story pretty nailed down. Because even if it's a good story, if it doesn't answer their question, you kind of just wasted their time. Right? So we want to move away from the emotions. We want to talk about the behaviors. In the rugby world, this means instead of using green triggers for our stories, we want to use blue triggers for our stories. We want to use process for our stories, not emotions for our stories. Okay. So that's the first thing I would do, is make sure you're good at telling your stories. And then the other thing that I would highly recommend is you want to make sure that you get good at what you're good at. Now, this sounds stupid, and I know. I get it. I realize this is ridiculous. But what I'm specifically trying to say is that a lot of times in our interviews, we try to focus on the things we aren't good at. I can't remember how red black trees work, so I'm going to go memorize red black trees. I can't remember how such and such algorithm works, so I'm going to go research that. I'm going to go on LeetCode and I'm going to do all the problems I don't know how to do. Yes, I agree. That's what's going to happen in your interview. They're going to present you with a situation that you aren't comfortable with, that you don't know how to do a thing. But if you are good at what you're good at, if you have something that shines, that's going to completely outclass anything where you had some trouble. People are probably willing to help you if you aren't great at exception handling. What they're not good at doing, but they need that trade-off, right? We really want them for this. These other things are okay. So for instance, what I'm trying to get at is, let's say that you feel like you're really good at system design. All right? If you're really good at system design, you might not even think, well, why should I prepare? I already know everything about system design. The reason you need to prepare is for two things. The first one is you want to have breadth. Read lots of sys diagrams. But you also want to have depth. So be able to summarize and draw just about anything. But the key to both of these is be efficient, right? In other words, if you were trying to do something for a client, you might fill up a dry erase board with your system design. But it's okay for most interviews. You've only got like a half an hour, 20 minutes or something. You got some very limited amount of time. It's okay if you draw a box that says security and you just say, hey, inside of here are things like security groups and, zero, what was it, zero, whatever the zero thing is for authentication, right? Like whatever you want to put in this box, you draw the box, you put the stuff in it, and you just mention it. You just move on. You want to tell them, hey, I'm aware of this, but when we're talking about some sort of file sharing service, that's things we need to care about, but it's not the focus. The focus when we talk about file management or file sharing services is we need to have the ability to go parallel. We have to make sure we can handle lots of users at once. We're usually talking about big payloads. We want to make sure we can talk about things like backup, like using Glacier, that kind of thing. In other words, make sure that you get as much breadth and as much depth as you possibly can in that 20 minutes. And that's really about being efficient. And that efficiency in whatever it is you want to do, so if it's not system design, great, cool. If you want to say, oh, what I really can do is software problem solving. Cool. Then the depth you want to get for that is or the breadth you want to get to that is lots of problems all the time. And if you want your depth on that, then what you want to be able to do is solve the same problem a dozen ways. And if you want to but then the efficiency is talk to edges, but skip them, right? In other words, I know that this edge case is a thing. Here's how I would test it. Here's how I would program around it. It's going to take more code than I would necessarily want to talk about here. If you want to see it, I'll do it, but I'm just making you aware that I'm aware of it and we can move on, right? Because you have interesting questions you want to ask me. My knowledge of edge cases just fills up the dry erase board, right? And that's kind of the thing you want to do is say, hey, this is what I'm good at. This is what I do. I do system design. I do software problem solving. I do configuration management. I do whatever it is you do, right? I do bash scripting. I do cube farms. I do whatever it is you do. Whatever that thing is that you want to say, here's how I shine, then develop your breadth, which you already have. You just want to hone it. Develop your depth. You already have that. You want to hone it and develop your efficiency. You might not have that, but the thing is you're trying to pack all of you in this thing you're really good at in 15, 20 minutes, right? And what that means is honestly knowing what you can omit, knowing what you can skip, knowing what you mention and move on. Because I think honestly that one skill is what everyone is looking for from a senior. They know in theory that you have the breadth. They know in theory you have the depth. Can you convince them without wasting their time? So, hopefully this is at least a little bit to understand how I think you should prepare. So get good at telling your stories, and that means no emotional triggers. You want behavior triggers, and get good at saying what you're good at, which means be efficient. Learn how to be efficient. Take the time to figure out what that means for your particular bright spot on the map. And then you really just want to tailor an interview into doing that. Don't be afraid to tell them how to interview you. Hey, I'm trying to hire in at this for this particular level, at this particular company, for this particular thing. I want to do your, I want to do I want to build a Jenkins cluster for you. Build a Jenkins cluster and send it to them. I want to build websites for you. Cool. Build a website for them and send it to them. Even if they don't ask for it, just share it. Just be like, here's this thing. And most people who are interviewers would love to talk about something else for once. So if you, I've had people who handed me projects before, and I was like, great, and then just destroyed them on their project. So I guess it's a mixed bag. So again, if you're going to send someone something, make sure you can talk about everything about it. That's my point. Get good at what you're good at. Don't worry about the rest. All right. I super appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. I feel like, yeah. I feel like there's no real reason for you to do it, and I just appreciate it, man. Thank you. I don't take it lightly. So, hope you have a great one, and I'll talk to you soon.